Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today I'm bringing to you my favorite books of 2019. We are also being joined by my one-eyed angel, Billie Eilish. I love her. I did order these as a countdown to my most favorite, so coming in at number 10 is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, right? Is that what it's called? Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. That is what it's called, yes. This was actually the very last book that I read of 2019, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Our main characters are Hazel and Josh, as the title would indicate. Hazel is a very zany and quirky girl with lots of pets, and she often gets told that she is too much by the guys that she dates. And then we have Josh, who's very straightforward and mellow, and they don't exactly mesh as characters. They knew each other when they were in college, and Hazel actually tried to date Josh, but he wasn't into it. And then through a series of events, many years after college, they are reunited and they become best friends. And so the whole premise of this book is that they're trying to help each other find a significant other, but every time they set up a date, it doesn't go well and they end up going home together. And so it's sort of like a best friends to lovers sort of thing. I have heard a lot of people talk about this on BookTube and say great things about it, and this might be my favorite Christina Lauren book. Like, it was really good. It really read like a romantic comedy. I had a lot of fun while I was reading it, and I really liked Hazel, the main character. Billy. I kind of lost where I was, but basically I was just trying to say that I really liked Hazel as a main character because I could relate to her a lot. I'm not quite as like over the top or quirky as she is, but I feel like when I was dating before I met my boyfriend, I got told that I was too much a lot, so I could really relate to that feeling of feeling less than and feeling like you had to change your personality to get guys to like you. And then I really liked Josh. I may be a little bit biased because my boyfriend's name is Josh, but I liked this Josh because he was just a really kind and nice character, and I really like nice guys in books. I'm kind of over the whole bad boy thing, so I really liked Josh. He also was Korean, which was a really nice rep thing to be happening in the book. His Korean mom, I think, was my favorite character in the whole book. But like I said, it just kind of read like a rom-com, and I had a lot of fun reading it. I think I started it at like 10 p.m. and I stayed up till like 4 in the morning finishing it because I liked it that much. It was just a good time. I really recommend it to anyone that likes new adult romance that also has really good characters and a good plot. The next book on my list is Lovely War by Julie Berry. This is a historical fiction book with a dash of Greek mythology. It is a multi-layered romance that follows two different couples, and the Greek mythology twist is that Aphrodite is telling the story of these couples meeting and how she inspired them to be together. I highly recommend this if you like historical fiction, specifically World War I, adorable romance, multiple storylines, soft boys, Greek mythology, and sobbing.
Ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
Everybody needs to stop sleeping on Julie Berry. This is the second Julie Berry book that's landed on one of my favorites lists. A couple of years ago, I read her middle grade book, The Emperor's Ostrich, also very good, highly recommend. And I just want to read more from Julie Berry. I really like her writing. I'm into it. The next book on my list is The Good Daughter by Karin Slaughter. That kind of rhymes. When we're brought into this book, it is 28 years in the past when Sam and Charlotte are children, and these men invade their home and their mother ends up getting murdered, and it kind of shatters their family. And now 28 years in the future, they are no longer close, and Charlotte is now a lawyer living in the small town where the tragedy happened, and Sam has gone and like moved on and doesn't really talk to her family anymore. And so in the beginning of the book, Charlotte witnesses a school shooting, and it's kind of connected in some ways to the tragedy that happened many years before, and so she kind of slowly connects the dots on what happened in the past, and then her sister Sam comes back to town, and through this reconciliation they're able to kind of piece together everything that happened. Hopefully that makes sense, but basically it just centers on these two sisters and murder, as most Karin Slaughter books do. Karin Slaughter is probably one of my favorite, if not my most favorite, thriller author. I feel like she just does a phenomenal job of writing characters, but also writing really compelling mysteries. I feel like the way that she weaved together these sisters' like traumatic past with the present day like school shooting that Charlotte witnesses was very unique and special, and I just really enjoyed it, and I just was so drawn in from the start to finish of this book, and I really look forward to reading more of Karin Slaughter's books. I will say I don't recommend Karin Slaughter to anyone that shies away from really dark things. Like there's definitely a lot of trigger warnings for like sexual assault and, like I said, a school shooting and violence. So if that's not your jam, if that's not your thing, I definitely would say don't read Karin Slaughter's books. They're also very gory, very over the top of the description when it comes to like dead bodies. So you gotta be like into that if you are gonna read her books. The next book on my list is Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly. This is a Cinderella retelling that follows the aftermath of the whole Cinderella story. It focuses on one of the ugly stepsisters. In this story, her name is Isabel, and she is the ugly stepsister who tried to cut off her toes to be able to fit into the glass slipper. This book reminded me a lot of Ella Enchanted, so if you like those sort of fairy tale retellings, I think you'd really enjoy this. I liked that it was dark and it was funny and the writing was really good, and I really liked the characterization of Isabel. And then I also really liked that there was this like whole thing about destiny and her trying to find herself. It was just really good. I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on this book. A lot of people don't realize it exists. You should read it. It's a good time. The next book I have is actually not a fiction novel. It is a personal development book called The Fuck It Diet by Caroline Dooner. This book radically changed my 2019. I don't really talk about this very openly on my channel, but for the past couple of years, I've struggled a lot with body image and just the way my weight is and what I look like. And I feel like I had tried a lot of dieting and counting calories and different things that people say are good for you, their wellness, you're trying to be healthy, all of that. But I just felt like it wasn't making me very happy. And so I got recommended this podcast called Food Psych by a friend, and Caroline Dooner was actually a guest on this podcast. And this book is basically about intuitive eating, which basically is this concept of just being in touch with your body and eating when you want to eat and not labeling food as good or bad, and just accepting this belief that food does not have any sort of morality, and this constant pursuit of like wellness and health that society has is actually like pretty unhealthy and like not good for us mentally or physically. I highly recommend this to anyone who struggles with disordered eating or just like an addiction to exercising or counting your calories. I feel like it'll really open your eyes to a lot of things that people don't tell you about food. I feel like society has all these beliefs about what's good and what's bad, and there's all this just fat phobia out in the world, and everybody's biggest fear is being larger, and I just feel like it really debunks a lot of that, and it was really helpful for me. I highly recommend it. It was a really great read. It really, like, I loved it so much that I cried, and like I feel like if you cry during a personal development book, that's when you really know that it's really hit home. And it was one of those books that when I finished it, I was like, wait, I've got no more book. I need more book. So I really look forward to reading anything else that this author writes. I also think in 2020, I'm going to be reading this other book by another person that I follow. I listen to her podcast, Food Psych, called Anti-Diet, and it has a similar concept to it. Her podcast is really great. So if you don't have time to read Caroline Dooner's book, I highly recommend listening to Food Psych. It's really good. The next book on my list is actually a series of books, and that is the Fever series by Karen Marie Moning. I actually started this series, I think, very early 2018, and then I never read the second book until this year. It is an adult urban fantasy series that focuses on our main character, Michaela Lane, who travels to Ireland after the death of her sister. Her sister was studying abroad in Ireland and she got murdered, and so Mac travels over to try to figure out what happened to her, and she soon discovers that her sister was tied up in the world of fae and magic, and so she opens her eyes to a world that she didn't know existed. And it has one of the best slow burn hate to love romances I've ever read. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it is a chicken that just slowly turns. Like, we don't really get anything. No rewards until many books into the series. I think the series was 6 books, and I read all 5 or 4. I don't know. Let me look it up. Okay, so there's 5 books. I was wrong. So I read 4 of them like in succession because that's how much I was really enjoying this series. I think I gave the first book like 3 stars because it was very like quintessential urban fantasy that was just kind of like cheesy, but there was just a lot of character development in our main character, and I think I rated most of the next books 4 stars. I just loved it so much. I would say that one of the big plot points is sexual assault, so if that would trigger you, I don't recommend reading this series. The love interest Barons is just someone that I actually hated him for a long time, but it's like he grows on you and then you're just kind of like into it. Like, I cannot wait to read a series that made me feel like this again. If you can recommend any sort of series that's similar to the Fever series, please recommend it down below, because this just like stirred up so many feelings in me, and I was just like, I don't even know, I just like rushed through it because I having such a good time. I feel like I'm not saying anything of value right now besides that I really enjoyed it. If you like fae, if you like adult urban fantasy, if you like a little frivolous fun, I highly recommend this series. My next book is A Question of Holmes by Brittany Cavallaro. This is the 4th and final book in the Charlotte Holmes series. Actually, let me say, I hope it's not the final book. There was actually only supposed to be 3 and then there was a 4th book, so I'm really hoping that we get a 5th book later, like maybe like an adult series spin-off of this. I would really like that. It follows Charlotte Holmes and Jamie Watson. If you can't tell, this is a sort of like spin-off of Sherlock Holmes. It's not a retelling. The only way I can kind of describe it to people is it's sort of like Disney Descendants. Charlotte and Jamie are descendants of the original like Sherlock and Watson. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's actually a really, really good book series that deals with a lot of like dark topics and a lot of like mysterious intrigue. I highly recommend it. It's really good. If you've ever seen Rocky from Blonde with the Book on Twitter or on YouTube, she is obsessed with this series and she is like the biggest reason why anyone has even read it. And like I said, it's got really good writing. I really like the characterization of Charlotte and Jamie, and I don't really know what to say beyond that. I think it's fun and good, and I really like the mysteries. I can't decide which book is my favorite. I feel like it's either the 2nd or the 4th book. This 4th book was just chef's kiss. It was so good. I really liked this conclusion to the series. It made me cry, it made me feel. I just felt a lot of things, and like I said, I'm really hoping for a spin-off series with them as adults together. I would be really into that. And then we have Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. I don't know if that's how you say her name, but hopefully it is. We have 2 main characters. We've got Reid and we've got Louise. Louise is a witch and Reid is a witch hunter. Reid and Louise, through a series of events, end up being forced to marry each other, but Louise is hiding that she's a witch, and so it's sort of like an enemies to lovers, fake marriage, just extravaganza that I was really into. I really loved the magic system of the witches. Like, there are different types of witches that draw their powers from different things. Like, I think Louise's magic, she has to give something to get something, and then she has a friend that uses blood magic, and it's just really interesting. I went into this with so-so expectations because I don't normally like YA fantasy, but this had like everything I could ever want. The romance was phenomenal. It even had the trope of there's only one bed, and it was just like sexy, and there was actually a really good sex scene, which is surprising for YA. I will say they had sex outside, not into that. I wish that YA characters would just have sex indoors. That would be really nice. The only downside is that I'm really sad that I have to wait so long for the sequel. I went into it knowing it was a 2019 release, but I didn't realize that it had just come out, and so I have to wait like a year to find out what happens to Louise and Reid, and I'm not happy about it. The next book on my list is A Dangerous Collaboration by Deanna Raybourn. This is the 4th book in the Veronica Speedwell series. I have talked about this series many times on my channel. It's one of my all-time favorites. I will never stop recommending it until I die. This book series takes place in Victorian London and follows our titular character, Veronica Speedwell, who is a lepidopterist, which is a butterfly scientist. And she is partnered up with this guy named Stoker, who is a natural historian, and they basically just like solve mysteries together. In the first book, Veronica is very nearly kidnapped, and she meets this baron who tells her she has all these secrets in her past that he wants to tell her. But before he could tell her, he leaves her with Stoker under his protection, and then he gets murdered. So Stoker and Veronica have to solve what happened to him, and then every book since then has been another mystery. This is another very slow burn romance. Like, I'm telling you, if they don't fuck in the 5th book, I'm going to lose my fucking mind. The good news is that the next book comes out in March. It's just such a good series. I really highly recommend it. If you like any sort of like Victorian wit, Sherlock type mystery sort of thing and slow burn romance, I think you'd really like this. It's a really funny series. It actually makes me laugh out loud a lot, and I really love both Veronica and Stoker. Again, if they don't fuck in the 5th book, I'll have some strong words for Deanna Raybourn. And last but not least, my all-time favorite book of 2019 was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a very controversial book. You either loved it or hated it. I obviously loved it. I read it twice in a row, and I never ever do that. I normally don't reread anything or rewatch anything. I'm very much someone that can't reread a book or rewatch a television show until a lot of time has gone by. But I literally listened to Daisy Jones on audio, finished it, and then went, back to the beginning and just played it again, and it felt so right, it felt so natural, it felt like I was meant to do that in life. This is a historical fiction book that centers on a fictional band called Daisy Jones and the Six, and it basically follows the rise and fall of the band through the 70s. It was just a really emotional ride for me. I cried a lot while reading this book, and I felt so much. All of the female characters in this book are absolutely inspirational, and I just felt so much. Like, I feel like I could write a dissertation about this book because of how much I liked it and how complex the characters were. And just, I feel like Taylor Jenkins Reid's mind was just like on another level. Like, I can't fathom like how she like interlock these characters. I know a lot of people would not agree with me because I have read quite a few reviews where people say the exact opposite of what I'm saying right now, and they really didn't like the characters or the format. But I loved it, and I feel like the audiobook like changed my life. And I definitely look forward to Reese Witherspoon's show on Amazon Prime that's gonna be based on this book. I don't really know how they're gonna make it into like a multi-season series, but I am open to them trying. I'm also really excited to hear the music because I'm pretty sure they're gonna make like actual versions of the songs that are talked about in this book. Like, I was so upset that this band didn't exist and that I couldn't actually listen to the songs that they were describing on the pages. It was so good. I had a really good time reading it. Obviously, I'm rambling about it. And that's it for my favorite books of 2019. Let me know down below your thoughts on any of these books. If you've read any of them, if you liked them, if you hated them, let me know what your favorite books were of the year. I'd love to pick them up if they're good. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day. Time passes, how I feel